Right, hi, welcome to Behind the Paddle podcast. I am, not in my lingerie. I need to actually take my dress off. I'll leave that in. Right, hi. I am Porcelain Victoria.
And I am Emily Sun.
Yeah, and this is Behind the Paddle podcast. We have took like a wee break.
January has been a month.
It's been wonderful. It's been lovely. It's been so good. So we are back. And today we are going to talk about proceed without caution. So this was the main reason why I went to London a good while ago. So proceed without caution is about the impact of prostitute cautions and convictions on sex workers' lives. And today we're just gonna probably just read through it, basically, through a nice lovely book which I got from my lovely London trip.
Yeah. Just kind of going over the report and kind of sharing a bit about what's in there and some of your insights on what's been covered and the kind of realities of how that's impacted people that we know and why this is so important.
Absolutely. So thousands of women in the UK have received a prostitute's caution, a specific type of caution reserved for the punishment of sex workers and/or have been convicted for prostitution offences. That is for loitering or soliciting for working on the street and for brothel keeping or controlling prostitution for working together in a premises together. Which we'll get into. We will. Having a prostitute's caution and/or a criminal record for a prostitution offence brands sex workers as criminals, making us an easy target for the police and others in authority to discriminate and deny us our rights. In practice, this means that sex workers lose custody of our children and are deported or prevented from travelling to other countries and are denied compensation and insurance, among other injustices. Additionally, a criminal record can put sex workers at greater risk of exploitation, rape, and other violence because it is a barrier to getting another job and leaving sex work. The risks of a prostitute's caution and the impacts of them are compounded for sex workers who are migrant, trans, women of colour, street workers, and working class.
So basically the most vulnerable of the people in the profession. The most affected by these laws.
Exactly. But yeah, so we're going to go through the lot of this, basically.
Yeah. Like, I think to just kind of summarise what you've said there, a profession that's legal has a lot of legislation attached to the activities surrounding it on the premise that it protects people from exploitation and harm.
Yep.
The profession is seen as having links to like trafficking and exploitation, and these laws have been put in place and are defended as the kind of fight back to protect women and protect vulnerable groups from facing exploitation, and yet furthers their exploitation and puts them more at risk, puts them more at harm, and affects every single aspect of their life and further traps them to not be able to exit that work if it's no longer suitable for them.
And this was all put in place by people who aren't sex workers and who don't have a love for it, and they have never needed to actually do sex work to like survive and things. Because there's loads of reasons why we do sex work.
Yeah.
And the people who put this in place, honestly, in my opinion, have no idea.
It's not about the people.
No.
That's clear, because the
statistics and everything.
The outcome of these laws and legislations are so discriminative of the people actually in those positions that it just makes their lives harder. It makes their work harder. It makes everything more difficult for them. It in no way helps them.
No.
In no way supports them.
No.
And that's why this reports like these are so important, because it just highlights that in a way that is unavoidable.
Exactly. And like, as much as I really want to dive in and go on a massive rant, because this is very much dear to my heart, we're going to take this bit by bit. So I've got to like pace myself. So shall we start with what the English Collective of Prostitutes is?
Yeah, of course. Do you want me to that part?
Yeah, come on.
Cool. So the people that have put this report together is an organisation who are called the English Collection of Prostitutes, or ECP. They are a network of sex workers working both on the streets and indoors, campaigning for decriminalisation and safety. They fight against being treated as criminals. They've helped sex workers win against charges of soliciting, brothel keeping, and controlling. The last two most often being used against women working together for safety.
Yeah.
They highlight that most sex workers are mothers trying to do the best for their children and campaign against austerity cuts for housing and other survival resources, so that any of us can leave prostitution if and when we want. They have an international network including sister organisations in Thailand, which is called Empower, and the United States, which is called US Prostitutes Collective.
Yeah. And the next part is the importance of the report, which I feel like sex workers understand the very importance of this report. And I know that a good few of our listeners maybe aren't sex workers. So the ECP did this research because they've seen the carnage and the pain that convictions and cautions can wreck other people's lives and other women's lives that come for them to help. They're horrified that women, many of whom are mothers working to support families and are pillars of the community, are treated with contempt, as if their lives are worth nothing once they get a prostitute's caution or a conviction. We see the humiliation, the impoverishment, violence, and exploitation heaped on women whose social power has been reduced by being branded a criminal. We are sick of the way that women with convictions are stigmatized and forced to apologize for our efforts to survive in a world where those in power aren't interested in our survival or the survival of loved ones. So I'd like to say just that little portion, like, it just them stating the fact that the people who are in power just don't care.
Yeah.
It's sad, and it really, really angers me. And where they're talking about how, yeah, there's mothers and other genders trying to support their families and like pillars of the community. Like, we've seen, well, I've seen as well, like police officers, and I've seen lawyers and who else, like big jobs. They have become sex workers for many reasons, but once like you're a sex worker, I feel like you're just looked down on in general.
Yeah.
And then once you get a prostitute's caution or a conviction, then it just worsens.
Then it's legitimized.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And yeah, you literally are branded
Yeah.
as a criminal. So, of course, sex workers aren't the only ones who are criminalized for trying to survive. The number of women being convicted for shoplifting and other small value theft are increasing as poverty rises. And again, we can't be to blame because of poverty rising. Wonder who does that. Most women in prison are there for non-violent crimes of poverty.
Yeah.
And those of us who are women of color face how do you say that word? Disproportionately higher levels of arrest and imprisonment. Prison sentences have been abolished for loitering and soliciting, but women are still going to prison for non-payment of fines and for brothel keeping / controlling prostitution. Charges that are used against working women where they're working together for safety. Campaigns are growing in visibility and determination to end prison sentences, particularly for pregnant women and mothers. Criminalizing women does not only affect women, it affects their children, their families, and wider society. So, with that, oh my god. Again, it comes down to poverty.
Yeah.
Everything comes down to poverty. Like, if you've listened to our previous podcasts, episodes, it all comes down to poverty at the end of the day.
There's very few people that are working not for money. Do you
Exactly.
know? Money is a driving force, is a driving factor in people in any employment for why they're there.
Yeah.
And I feel like from not just this report, but just things we've seen, like, there is a higher prevalence of people going into sex work because of poverty, I would say. And that it's a way to make, like, a decent amount of money without necessarily having to, like, go through, like, an education system that is designed to not allow, like, people who are coming from an impoverished background to access.
Yeah.
Like, it is a way into
I
a certain level, like, of money without necessarily needing to have, like, I don't want to say the family background, it sounds bad, but just in terms of, like, looking at it from a poverty perspective, like,
somebody who's not born into wealth.
It's an opportunity for people that they might not have otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
given their circumstances.
Me personally, I don't really know where I would be if I didn't do sex work. Because I did sex work from a very young age. So like I did sex work when I was like 15. I know, shocker. And then I started doing it when I was 17. So like I took a wee break to evaluate my life. But I worked from like 16 to 19 as a quote unquote normal job, and I would go for like interviews and things like that for like other job opportunities, but it didn't pay enough.
No, it's not a way to get yourself out of poverty. Like, working on minimum wage is still living in poverty.
Exactly.
Especially when a lot of the time these days you would actually get more on benefits than you would working like full time in certain jobs.
I don't blame people at all. Because it's terrible, the fact that there is that saying where it's what is it? We work to live? Is that the saying?
Work to survive, not thrive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, to continue living, we need to work. We don't just...
it's live to work, not work to live. That's the...
It doesn't make any sense to me which way it is, because...
It's saying both of them. That's like the saying, like, you're living to work. Like, your purpose is to work, rather than working to live your life.
Yeah.
Like, it's like you're only...
I mean, to me, I'm just a slave to my job. So to me, it looks like the exact same, because that's how it's going to be for a good while. And sadly, that is how it is for a lot of people, where they're just living paycheck from paycheck, basically.
That is being self-employed. Like, you do not have a lot of the same benefits, like, especially working in certain industries, because a lot of the things that are put in place for those that are self-employed are not accessible if you work within just the sex industry in general, which is part of what not necessarily this particular fight is for, but just like the decriminalisation of sex work in general is for, is to allow people to have the same rights as other workers.
Yeah, I mean, if we want to go back to our previous episodes, we talked about like banking and stuff.
Yeah. But all the insurances that you get as part of, like, that you can access as part of being a self-employed individual do not work within the sex industry that I have found.
No.
No. Where you do get sick pay, you do get cover if you are in hospital. Do you know, like
yeah,
a lot
I got
of
no
these things.
pension. I need to make my own pension at some
Yeah,
point.
I feel like you could get a pension. I feel like that's, but maybe it'll be the same as banking. Do you know?
Well,
You never know. Like,
I've tried to get insurance.
yeah, insurance is a
and
tough
life
one.
insurance.
Yeah,
They want a lot of money a month for that.
yeah.
So it's not fair at all. I think previously maybe we did mention about, was it Belgium that recently gave a new law, I think, or a bill that passed recently, where people who do work in brothels get a lot more rights, and they do get like maternity pay, and I want to assume sick pay, but like they've made it quite a lot better for sex work there. And it just needs to hurry up, really, in the UK, but I don't know if that will actually happen.
Yeah, so that was the 1st of December last year. New law in Belgium, the first of its kind in the world. So they're at the forefront of this. Will now be the case. Sex workers will be entitled to official employment contracts, health insurance, pensions, maternity leave, and sick days.
Yep.
Which is massive.
It is. I would fucking love that. Especially like all of it. All of it. I absolutely would. Because I remember, especially maternity leave, I can't remember exactly how I got it. But it's not much at all.
No.
But it's something, but it's not much. So like I'm really hoping
It's not like what you would get if you were working in a 9 to 5 office job.
exactly. And I think I got that because of my previous tax year working at like my normal job.
Like it kind of covered you from that.
Yeah. But yeah, no. I'm not looking forward to it. I really am not looking forward to like retirement pensions or any types of insurance because it's expensive.
Yeah.
And it's, well, I don't know if I can get maternity now or anything like that. So we'll see. We'll see. Hopefully in a few years it will get better. But I am really, really happy for Belgium that that has happened.
That's massive.
So good. Like that's it took a few years for that to pass as well.
Well, it's interesting because while I was looking there, it was saying Belgium fully decrimmed in 2022. So it's only 2 years later that they've managed to fight for workers' rights to that extent.
Workers' rights. Like,
you know, like
that's the highlight there.
It's not something that you hear about people. No, I'm not saying that people don't fight for that every day, but like to this level of like basic workers' rights, it's ridiculous. Like we're not in fucking 1800s industrial.
I know. I mean,
Britain, like it's just crazy to me.
I mean, in the UK, women were only allowed their own bank account in like the 70s.
Yeah, women could only own their own business. I think it was like the 90s. I'm sure it's only been 30 years, like 36 years when I looked the other day. So it must have been what 98, something like. No, my brain's not braining. Doesn't matter when, but it wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, it really wasn't.
Yeah.
And it's like, we need rights. Yeah, going back to this, the next paragraph is, anyone who speaks out against injustice comes up against new laws that criminalize protest and risks long prison sentences. Women who are central to movements for change are particularly impacted. The police are responsible for implementing prostitution laws. Thank you, police. Thank you. Sex workers speak of daily humiliation, bullying, threats, and violence at the hands of officers, and have been shown to be one group of vulnerable women targeted by police rapists and abusers. One study in East London found that 42% of street workers had experienced violence from the police.
That's insane.
Oh, it's disgusting. It really is. The growing sex worker-led movement for decriminalisation, the anti-rape movement, and Black Lives Matter movements, alongside other movements for justice, have succeeded in getting official confirmation of our experiences at the hands of the police. I love that there's so many movements that have all said, yeah, we've been screwed by the police somehow.
They've all got one thing in common, and yet that's not where people are looking right now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Report after report has exposed them as misogynistic, wow, surprise, racist, and homophobic, obviously, and criminally corrupt. As a result, sex workers who complain of police violence and abuse are now more likely to be believed, which is amazing.
Yeah.
The
mountain evidence is getting difficult to ignore. Yay!
Yeah, because it's happening all the time. We've all seen over and again that the public understands how criminalisation puts sex workers at greater risk of rape and other violence. As far back as 2006, after the tragic murders of 5 young women in Ipswich, there was an outpour of sympathy and empathy from local residents who shared with the ECP their observations as to how heavy policing displaced women to more isolated areas and into greater danger. I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah.
We found the Safety First coalition to campaign for decriminalisation and safety and got support from many quarters. By publishing this report, which spells out the wide-ranging lifelong harm and injustice that prostitute cautions and convictions inflict on women, we hope to galvanize greater support for the international sex worker-led movement for the decriminalization of sex work. We also want to provide clarity in relation to those organizations and individuals who are pressing for women's cautions and convictions to be expunged, yet refuse to support current sex workers in our struggle for decriminalization. We are not only victims, we are survivors and campaigners, part of a women's movement which refuses to accept rape, domestic violence, poverty, and exploitation. Very clear. So yeah, I feel like that speaks for itself in the fact that there's so many other movements and there is a lot of evidence about the police.
Like, there's a lot of people all speaking out and all saying the same thing.
Yeah, even if they're not sex workers, they're going, what the fuck?
Like, there's a clear issue here.
Exactly. So, yeah, if you want to read the next part.
Yeah, so just to put everything in like context for people that maybe aren't as up on what the current laws currently are surrounding sex work. They are so outdated and so from a time before women in general had any rights. Not that that's the only thing this affects,
we
but
have
it's
rights
clear
now.
More than we did like 100 years ago, but you know, there's still a lot of work to be done. But a lot of these laws are from even further ago than that and have never really changed or been updated. So, and I think that's pretty clear in the wording of some of them.
Yeah.
So at the moment, sex workers are forced to choose between keeping themselves safe and possible arrest, or avoiding a criminal record and putting themselves in danger. The 3 laws most used to arrest and criminalise sex workers are as follows. So the top one, loitering or soliciting. It is an offence for a person to loiter or solicit in a street or public place persistently for the purpose of offering their services as a prostitute. That is interesting. I have never read this with the word persistently, because that to me means
more than once.
If it was a one-time thing, it wouldn't be illegal. It's about having like a place that you consistently, persistently go to.
Well, like a safe space.
Yeah, exactly.
Somewhere where you feel safe that you can actually offer your services.
So, the repeal of the loitering and soliciting laws was proposed as far back as 1979 by Maureen Colquhoun MP, who worked with the ECP to put forward the Protection of Prostitutes Bill. Presenting the bill to Parliament, she said, "It is totally unjust system that a woman can be twice cautioned on the evidence of a single police officer. On a third occasion, still on the evidence of a single and often the same police officer, she can be charged with loitering with intent for the purposes of prostitution. If she pleads not guilty before the court, the same police officer reads out the evidence of his 2 cautions. Before any offence has been proved, a person innocent in the eyes of the law can be labelled as a common prostitute. So maybe that's what it means by persistently, in that it's only going to go to court if the if there's been a caution on multiple occasions that then leads up to it going to court.
Yeah.
So the label common prostitute was abolished by the Policing and Crime Act 2009, but this law at the time changed the definition of persistent soliciting to twice in a period of 3 months. That's why I've not heard that. Making it easier for police to arrest sex workers. The ECP spearheaded opposition to this at the time. The penalty for loitering or soliciting is a fine and/or an engagement and support order, which are promoted as an alternative to fining, but function as another form of criminalisation. In theory, for anyone to be convicted of loitering and soliciting, an observable offence must be established on 2 occasions. This is a quote. 2 officers need to witness the activity and administer the non-statutory prostitute's caution. Of course, in practice it doesn't work that way. Women in the ECP's network have been given a prostitute's caution by police shouting out of the window of their car as they passed. This is more likely where the women are already known to the police as sex workers. Prostitutes' cautions differ from police cautions in that the woman doesn't have to admit guilt, there is no right of appeal, and it stays on your record for life or until you're in 100. We say more about the differences between these 2 cautions below. ECP members have been convicted of loitering and soliciting on the basis of police evidence such as she was standing on a street corner looking in the direction of several men. One woman described the way the police implemented the loitering and soliciting laws. The police wait outside my house to catch me when I leave. It doesn't matter how I'm dressed, who I'm with, where I'm going. They say I'm loitering. When they stop me, they jeer at me and make jokes at my expense, often sexually explicit jokes. When they arrest me, I'm strip searched, and they sometimes leave the door open so the male officers can see in. All this to humiliate me.
It's disgusting.
That's made me.
It really is. The fact that we have police officers that...
It's just men in power.
Yeah.
You know, it's just
I
this age-old, like...
Yeah, like, I understand if you listen to our episodes, we kind of do hate men. But it's men who do this that we hate, and it's just it's conveniently
just statistics at this point.
Exactly.
You know? It's not like
not like against all men, but statistically, all men are cunts.
Like, reading this, right? This sounds like it could have been 100 years ago. This sounds like it could have been. Do you know? This doesn't sound like this is happening in modern day London. Exactly. Like, it's actually like. I don't want to say comical, I just mean in how ridiculous it is. Like, it just doesn't feel like this in modern day could be happening to somebody on the regular and nothing able to be done about it.
So not all of this is from London. Is that
Fair.
one? Is that? Oh no.
It just sounds like London to me, just given like what we've kind of discussed in that, like.
Oh yeah,
that's the prevalence of like police.
There's a
like
lot
violence towards
in London, especially.
Is mostly in not even mostly in London, but it seems like there's more.
London's massive.
More happening in London than elsewhere.
So I know one of the stories. I think is going to be near Liverpool and stuff like that. I don't believe my friend's story is in here, who is in Scotland and stuff. Yeah, but. We'll discuss that a bit more later, but that is absolutely disgusting that they can abuse their power to make
just in broad daylight on the street. This is what I mean. That's what makes me think London. Like, I could be wrong, and I'm not in any way wanting to like put that out there, but that's my take on it. That like,
oh no, a lot of this stuff is from London in general, but it does happen all over the UK as well. Totally. This is just the brave women who have came forward and said, this is what happens. And sadly, a good majority of it does happen in London. Some people can speak up, some people aren't able to.
Yeah.
And
they're putting themselves at risk to actually put their voice out there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Which is why I wanted to go down to London.
Yeah.
Because there was only a handful of sex workers that did go there and were able to go there.
Yeah.
And like, even when there was a video at one point and they covered her face and like it was a shadow and stuff like that, like it was anonymous. Because again, the police know these sex workers, and people have families and everything like that. Everybody's got a different situation, and it's just absolutely disgusting that we're still treated like this.
It just goes to show like the power that these people have over them in every aspect of their lives, that they don't even feel they're able to speak up without being anonymous.
Yeah, absolutely.
When police instigate a crackdown in any area, the number of loitering and soliciting convictions and prostitutes cautions issued increase. In some cases massively. For example, a police operation in the West Midlands resulted in 800 prostitutes cautions being given out over a 2-year period that ended in 2014. In the London borough of Redbridge, 639 women were given prostitutes cautions for soliciting between 2013 and 2015. In 2019, in Stoke-on-Trent, the police Operation Colin resulted in 270 sex workers being charged with loitering and soliciting. An operation to tackle prostitution in Litford in 2013 resulted in 236 prostitutes being cautioned. Specialist funding for a team of police officers in Newham
Yeah.
resulted in 94 prostitutes cautions being issued in 1 year. Further, evidence of police racism is demonstrated in figures that found between April 2015 and July 2016, 92% of women who were issued cautions for loitering/soliciting in Redbridge in 2015 were Romanian. Statistics from the Metropolitan Police show that between 2016 and 2021, out of 259 people arrested for loitering, just 1% were white British. It is women who are disproportionately arrested under loitering and soliciting laws. Figures for London between 2016 and 2021 show that 94% of people arrested for loitering and soliciting were female. In Manchester, those who went to court charged with loitering or soliciting between 2012 and 2016, 100% were female.
See, that is disgusting. The fact that, what was it exactly? Stoke-on-Trent, the police operation calling. There was a fucking operation.
Yeah.
There was an actual task force that resulted in 270 sex workers getting a prostitute's caution or being charged with loitering and soliciting. I'm sorry, who is that helping?
The scary thing about this as well is, like, if you can't appeal it and they need no evidence for it, this could happen to anybody.
Yeah.
This could happen to anybody out in the street that is near a group of men.
Yeah.
Or not even.
Oh, wait. Oh, this is the whole, what was she wearing?
Yeah. Well, that woman, which I'm assuming was a woman, had said that it didn't matter what she was wearing. Mm-hmm. That's a case where she was saying she was known to police. Yeah. But what's to stop someone doing this to literally anybody? Yeah. If there's nowhere for you to fight it and they don't even need to prove it, what grounds is this being based on?
Exactly. Oh, it's disgusting that there's been so many cautions, and it's like, to tackle prostitution, okay, are you going to give them a safe space to do it in? Like, they need to survive. Like, it is ridiculous. It really is. And the fact that 94% of people that were arrested were female, and then 100% were female that actually got charged.
Yeah. And not all sex workers are female.
Yeah.
Like, not by any lick of the imagination, you know. I would go as far to say it's probably a majority,
mm-hmm.
but not 100%. Not in the way that it's been reflected in the way that it's been penalised by the law.
Mm-hmm.
It's yet again, like, attacking vulnerable groups.
Well, yeah, because 92% of women who were issued cautions for loitering/soliciting in Redbridge in 2015 were Romanian.
Yeah. So
And
they're
it's like,
very much
come
going
on.
after what in their eyes is like a certain
Yeah,
demographic of people.
yeah. And it's horrible. I hate it because it's disgusting. The way, like, I'm white British, and
Mhm.
like the fact that I've got a better chance, just a wee better chance of not getting
1% and whatever that was.
yeah, exactly. That was 1% out of 259 people arrested for loitering between 2016 and 2021.
Was that in a place or just generally?
Statistics from the Metropolitan Police.
So London.
Yeah. What the fuck? What the fuck?
So targeted.
Yeah.
It's unreal.
Absolutely.
So women in the ECP's network have successfully worked to get a prostitute's caution expunged. We've also fought loitering and soliciting charges, and even won in some cases by showing that the procedure for issuing a prostitute's caution wasn't followed.
So I mean, I'm just happy that organizations like ECP do exist, and go fund them. Like, we need to decriminalize this as soon as possible.
Yeah. I have never, I have been involved in different fights over the course of my career history, just with some of my old jobs and stuff, in terms of like trying to elicit change in like government procedures and just general like the systems that are in place. And I have never come across a fight that has been so like everybody agrees.
Yep.
Like literally, like all the players in the game are literally all singing from the same hymn sheet, and that decrim is the only way forward. And there isn't like any real infighting in the big issues that need to change and what the solutions are for those going forward. And yet they're still coming up against, they're still having to fight it. Like, it's ridiculous. Like every charity, even like the World Health Organization, Amnesty, like all these big names and big advisors to the government are all in agreement with all the charities, all the people in the street. All these people facing different issues, which you would imagine would have different solutions to them, are all coming together in one voice and saying the same thing.
Decrim.
And they're still being met with resistance. It's just laughable. It's ridiculous.
It is. Right, so we are going on to brothel keeping, which is one of my favourite fucking laws, which makes so much sense.
Yeah.
A brothel is a place where more than one woman uses the premises for the purpose of prostitution, either simultaneously or one at a time. So, yeah.
Every hotel in Britain.
Basically, yeah. So if you want to work with a mate for safety, you can't. It's a no-go. In 2003, the maximum sentence for keeping, managing, acting, or assisting in the management of a brothel was increased from 6 months in prison to 7 years. Hundreds of women are arrested, raided, charged, and convicted every year under these brothel keeping laws. This is a major obstacle to women's safety. Duh. Sex workers want to work together because it is safer, less boring, and cheaper if you can share the costs. I mean, I feel like anybody, when they're on a work trip away or just like on a work trip, sharing the costs and working with somebody is much, much better. But we can't do that. A 2016 study found that many sex workers share premises as a safety measure that allows people to screen clients, call for help if need be, and prevent clients from finding out their personal addresses. All of that is freaking true. The fact, let me go through this one by one. So, screening clients, some people are able to do that, some people aren't. Some people can screen because they have like the privilege to do it, I want to say.
I would argue that, yeah.
Yeah. Whereas other people can't. I remember a few years ago where I couldn't screen clients. In the ways of I needed money.
like it's a poverty issue again.
Exactly.
Because screening clients reduces the amount of clients you're going to get.
Yep.
Which is just obvious, you know.
Yep. Calling for help. I know instances where a session has gone wrong and that sex worker is now bleeding, or they've been slapped or hurt, or even raped. And yeah, a sex worker can be raped, absolutely. And there needs to be other people there to help and combat this.
It makes it less likely to happen as well, just overall.
And even if it does happen, you can deal with it there and then, and you've got somebody that supports you and that can fucking comfort you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's ridiculous that we're not even allowed that. Like, what? Excuse me? And again, it's towards women. Like, the law literally is more than one woman. It's ridiculous.
Aye, like that wasn't changed. So there, it's not that law is still worded that way, but there's been like a, what is it when they add like a second part? Not an amendment, but like a
bullshit.
They've added to it basically to include men as well. But they've not just changed the wording to be non-gendered. They've like added an extra part to it.
Yeah.
And it was added. In fact, I'm going to look this up quick.
Like, it's also incredibly hard to find these facts and laws as well.
They're all worded so loosely in such a grey area way that like it could apply to so many situations.
Exactly.
It's difficult to avoid that.
Yeah.
The original law as well, actually, it was 2 women having sex in a premises. It wasn't even prostitution.
Mm-hmm.
It was just sex at all, which is basically every house in the country.
Yeah.
Like, this is what we mean by very loosely worded.
It really is.
It left the decision on how that was going to be applied to a person very much up to the law and the police.
Yeah. It is really ridiculous that we still have to deal with this, sex workers, where we can't work in safety because the law literally says, go fuck yourself. You're going to be more vulnerable working by yourself, and that's what we want. And it's an absolute joke. So one of my friends, she was working with other people, and...
Sorry, so the law came in 1967 when private homosexual acts between men aged over 21 were like more illegalized. So I think that was why it was worded, because just being homosexual was illegal.
Yeah.
Full stop. Which makes me wonder, I don't know if men being prostitutes for women has ever been illegal based on what I'm reading.
I don't think so.
Specifically if it's between 2 men.
Yeah. Disgusting.
From what I can find.
Ugh.
But if I find differently, we'll do another episode on that at some point.
But yeah, my friend, she was working with other people and she had like her own place and stuff. And she got charged for having a brothel just because she worked with other people. And it's absolutely insane. And like she tried to find a solicitor, a lawyer, who actually knew about this and knew about the laws. And she found it so difficult to actually find lawyers that actually knew the law on brothel keeping and sex work. And it is such a grey area, even for lawyers, solicitors.
Yeah, people literally
people in
trained
law
to read these laws struggle with them.
Exactly.
Because they are worded so loosely and they're so grey.
Yeah, and in the UK, you've got Scotland, Ireland, Wales, and England, and they all have their own different fucking laws.
Yeah.
And
so it needed to be someone in Scotland, and this is where the problem lies, that, like...
Is it English law? Is it Scottish law? Which is which?
A lot of the charities that are involved in things like this are
in London and stuff.
Or English-based, and therefore working from the English version of said laws, which is quite different, I think, from what's up here.
Quite, yes.
A lot of them have been updated from like the fucking 1800s, whereas ours are still not
Still
so much.
back in the Stone Age.
So-
So the justification for brothel keeping law is that sex workers are being coerced and trafficked. No, I'm not. Yet, a 2023 report found that most sex workers working in brothels aren't even working for managers.
Yeah.
Instead, the most common third party are other sex workers themselves, mainly in the role of colleagues. Also, sex workers, quote, feel forced to choose between working alone and without support or risking prosecution,
Prosecution.
that's the word, for themselves or any third parties they work with. Like, again, we have to frickin' choose between can we pay our bills and are we going to get done for this,
Yeah.
basically.
Are we going to follow the law to a T and risk losing out on money, safety, like other people's experiences, and just generally, like, working by yourself's no fun.
No.
Like, it can be sometimes, but like
Mhm.
generally it's nice
It's better
to be
with a
able to
pal.
work with other people.
Yeah. And like it can absolutely, if word gets out, there's your clientele fucking gone.
Yeah.
It affects so much, and then your family might find out.
There's just a domino effect attached to
Exactly.
what are
Being exposed.
Yeah.
Basically. Research from Ireland shows that the vast majority of these convicted of brothel keeping, 85%, are female. This Ireland study also showed the discriminatory application of these laws, as all of the sex workers convicted were non-nationals.
Yeah.
The ECP has fought against charges of brothel keeping. In some cases, our campaigning and legal casework has forced the Crown Prosecution Service and the police to drop the charges. For example, in the case of 2 migrant women who went to court in 2019, another woman was found not guilty by a jury which accepted her defense of duress of circumstances as she provided evidence of the high levels of attacks on sex workers, showing that she had to work with others in order to protect herself from violence. Which, come on, why would you not want other sex workers to work with each other?
What frustrates me is that, like, the people that are upkeeping these laws, right? Surely all their guidance and the way that they are taught to manage these situations, some of which we've seen and read, and we don't have it to hand just now, but everything's worded in such a way as it's about keeping the women safe, or keeping the people in general safe, but the way it's worded, women. It's always very focused on women. About not, like, overstepping bounds, about not, like, the thing we had read about the brothel keeping, it was talking about, like, trying to approach the women, like, once they'd left and speak to them and find out what's going on, find out if they've been trafficked, find out if they've been coerced. Like, everything, at least in the guidance, is very supportive. At least it's worded that way, and that it's about keeping the people safe. It's about, like, finding out exactly what's went on, so that if there is somebody in that position that is actually keeping a brothel and is exploiting people and has trafficked people, that the people that work there are used to give evidence, to give testimony against that person, and that that person is the one that they're supposed to be going after, and that everything on the lead up to that is gathering evidence against them. And yet, from what this is saying, and from the experiences we've heard from people that we know, like, that is not how that's been carried out in practice. So in a weird way, like, it is actually the police. I'm not saying that the system doesn't need to change. I'm not saying in any way that the way that things are set up just now is working. But the way that it's worded is worded in a positive way. They're being taught in a positive way and choosing to ignore that from what we've seen. And that, like, laws shouldn't be up to individuals. And that's what's happening, at least in my opinion, at the moment, is that people are going into the police, they're taking the law into their own hands, they're behaving the way they want, they're bringing their own discriminations, their own opinions, their own version of how the world is, and they are reacting and acting in line with that, rather than in line with how they've been taught in the guidance that is put in place as part of this legislation.
Yeah.
And, like, the legislation does need to change, but for me, it's a difficult one, because it seems like the way that the government has put the guidance across, like, as it is better than how it's been carried out at the moment. I don't know where I was going with that, but yeah. Cool. So, we're on to controlling prostitution for gain. A person commits an offence of controlling prostitution for gain if they intentionally control any of the activities of another person relating to that person's prostitution in any part of the world, and does so for or in the expectation of gain for himself or a third party. Controlling prostitution is interpreted widely by the courts, as we've said.
So, let me just interrupt. So, controlling for prostitution, that can also include if you have a partner and they drive you to a session.
Yeah.
Like, even if, like, that session is just, like, down the road.
Yeah.
Then they can be included and get charged and things like that. Also, if you, say, are a partner to a sex worker, then you are... What's the word?
Living off the means of prostitution.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which you can get done for too.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
This is what we mean by, like, interpreted widely. And it feels very purposeful that things have been left open to such an extent that basically anybody walking through the doors, no matter the circumstance, can be charged under these laws. Because they are left in such a way that it depends on the opinion of the people in the court that day.
Exactly.
It depends on the opinion of the police officers that day.
Yeah, it's why I feel like even if you say you're a dominatrix and, like, you're like non-sexual or anything like that, it is still sex. It is still sex work.
Yeah.
And you can still get done for it.
Yeah.
It just depends on who's looking at it.
Totally.
So,
in one case, police claimed in court that women were controlled because they were required to work certain days of the week between certain times and charged a specified amount of money for each service. So literally, how
self-employed.
Everybody's work works. Yeah. That's you being controlled by them. It's like, see if we brought this to apply to all jobs, it'd be class. You just work when you want, where you want, for how much money you want.
I know.
And anybody that says any differently is controlling you, and you can take them to court.
Right?
Great.
So like my quote-unquote normal job, I'm taking you to court because I was minimum wage.
You've manipulated me and controlled me.
You gave me working hours on, like, a 0-hour contract. No.
So, in this case, no controller was named or identified. And the magistrate agreed, saying that the lure of gain and the hope of a better life for women who were desperate to earn some money amounted to control and incitement.
I just like money.
Who doesn't? You know, that's just like nobody's working and no wanting paid for it.
Exactly.
And nobody who's got money, barely anybody who's got money works. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh. Convictions for loitering and soliciting, brothel keeping and controlling are not classifying the public and employers that they are, leading to increased stigma and discrimination. They will always show up on the enhanced DBS check. A prostitute's caution stays on a woman's record until she is 100 years old. So even the caution, anybody could be cautioned and it no go to court, because from what we've seen, it should be 2 cautions before it gets to that stage. But even just getting a caution that you can't appeal and doesn't need to be proved, never sets foot in a courtroom, can still come up on your employer's background check on you.
Ridiculous.
And will be on there for life.
Yep.
Because I don't know many 100-year-olds that work, so it's no going to come off until
I can set that record.
Cool. 1, 2.
Prostitution's caution versus police caution. A prostitute's caution differs from a police caution. 1. A police caution is issued on the basis that the person accepts guilt for the offence they are being cautioned about. Guilt? Are you taking the piss? Guilt. Oh. 2. A prostitute have reasonable cause to believe has committed an offence of loitering or soliciting. There doesn't even need to be evidence of loitering or soliciting, just for the police to say they believe there is. Because everyone trusts the police.
Yeah.
Police discretion of this kind is an invitation of abuse of power. So going back to number 1, guilt accepts guilt like it's a bad thing.
So what they mean by that is, like, if you get cautioned, just a regular police caution, that only goes on your record if you say, yeah, I did that thing.
Yeah.
I think otherwise it would go to court and need to be proved. Whereas that's not the case
But the whole
for this.
guilty part just rubs me the wrong way because it makes it sound like you're doing something bad. So number 3, there is no right of appeal against a prostitute's caution. Lovely. 4, a police caution is spent after 2.5 years, filtered out from someone's record after 6 years, and doesn't need to be disclosed to employers. A prostitute's caution will show up on a woman's enhanced DBS check until she is 100.
That is terrifying.
It is.
So, disclosure and barn service, or the DBS check. Employers in the public, private, and voluntary sectors can carry out a DBS check on potential and current employees to find out if they have unspent criminal convictions, cautions, that is, criminal cautions, and an employment history causing them to be barred from a particular role. There are 3 types of DBS checks: basic, second, standard, lists spent and unspent convictions, cautions, final warnings, and reprimands, and 3, enhanced. Lists information on spent and unspent convictions, cautions, final warnings, and reprimands, plus any information held by local police that's considered relevant to the potential candidate's role. Prostitutes' cautions are not mentioned, yet prostitutes' cautions and convictions for loitering and soliciting, brothel keeping and controlling show up on an advanced check forever. When compiling a list of jobs which are likely to require a DBS check, we looked at jobs that are more commonly done by women, as most sex workers are women. These jobs include carers, including home care workers, workers in care homes, and anyone caring for adults with disabilities or children, childminders, community centre workers, counsellors, medical professionals, including first responders, nurses, and even first aiders, social workers, teachers, and vets, or any job relating to animal care. A campaign by business leaders to ban the box is asking employers to remove the tick box in application forms which asks if someone has a criminal conviction. This may help in some situations. However, the criminal conviction is still made known to the employer at a later stage in the recruitment process. In any case, the campaign frames the issue as giving people with criminal convictions the opportunity to compete fairly for roles and move on for their past mistakes. What women did to receive a caution or conviction wasn't a mistake. To step outside of the law in order to ensure that your children are fed should be acknowledged as an act of bravery, not a moral or criminal flaw. Sex workers and many other people are being convicted under unjust laws. Convictions and cautions for sex work and other crimes relating to poverty must be expunged, and no one should be convicted in the future.
Yeah. Oh. The impact of criminalization. Criminalization undermines sex workers' safety. A recent report by the UN Working Group on Discriminalization? Yeah. Against women and girls confirms that by giving police powers to directly or indirectly target sex workers, criminalization models facilitate systematic violence and undermines the sex workers' health and safety. Migrant sex workers are particularly targeted. The threat of prosecution for loitering or soliciting for women working on the street, and of brothel keeping and controlling for women working in premises, prevents sex workers reporting rape and other violences. Sex workers forced to run from the police are driven to work in more isolated and unfamiliar areas. Women working together in premises that are constantly being closed are pushed from one location to another, dismantling any safety measures they have managed to establish, like installing safety gates, working close to colleagues in better lit areas, or building a pool of regular clients. Now, this all comes back to what I've said previously. It's like you're taking away our safety, moving us on, not creating a safe space, and just making it more unsafe.
Yeah.
And again, for me at least, what we're talking about, where it comes to the dangers of sex work and it comes to the dangers of police, are the majority males.
Yeah.
And it's just so disappointing that still in this day and age, the police are targeting sex workers and the law is. And we just, well, they have realized, I want to say, that it is safer if we work together, that we are safer if we're all in one building. We are safer because of the safety measures that we take. But
They take time to establish in an area, and the constant moving about takes away from that.
exactly.
Like, it feels like every step people take towards working safer, the police are coming in and disrupting.
Yeah.
In an effort, from what is spoken about, to dissuade people from this line of work. However, if people do decide to leave, there's one, no support in place, and two, it's so much more difficult to get jobs, because if they have received a caution in their time working in sex work, they are discriminated against trying to rejoin the workforce.
Exactly. And like from previous few episodes ago, I even spoke about how like I was stealthed at one point and I felt like I just couldn't report it to the police because I doubt they would do anything about it or take it seriously. And there are sadly horror stories and true stories where sex workers have told the police and they've just laughed at their faces.
Yeah.
And it's sad and disappointing about the fact that this is the world that we live in and they just don't care. Like I know that that me personally, like I love like the Ring camera, but like some places that operate like, well, some places that you go don't even have like a keyhole. No, not a fucking keyhole. What's it?
A peephole.
Peephole.
Mm-hmm.
And like it's little things like that where like safety needs to be thought about.
Yeah.
And so like when you've established, oh, this place is safe to work from, but then you get moved on or it gets closed down. It's like where are you to go?
You're back to square one again.
Exactly.
So the next section is the implementation of the prostitution laws. So there has been a drop in the number of convictions for loitering and soliciting and brothel keeping, but fewer prostitutes' cautions and convictions doesn't mean that police enforcement has ended. According to 2022 Ministry of Justice statistics, there were 107 people charged with brothel keeping, with 4 people sentenced. Figures show that 167 people were arrested for aiding, etc., offence by prostitute. This could be a range of offences such as controlling, causing, and inciting prostitution. Again, this doesn't indicate the extent of criminal charging because some people are charged with additional offences such as conspiracy to control or incite prostitution for gain. Raids and arrests still continue, but are now largely done under the guise of anti-trafficking and modern slavery operations, which is why I think the guidance that we've read is so worded in such a way.
Yeah.
And the excuse being that sex workers are victims that need to be saved. Again, how
No.
this was written.
No.
Yet, information obtained under Freedom of Information laws show 69% of police raids reported as being linked to modern slavery and sex trafficking are not resulting in any trafficking victims being referred to support services. Around a quarter of such raids discovered no trafficking victims. Many migrant sex workers go on to be threatened with deportation. The fear of deportation has increased since the Brexit referendum. So, bulling a china shop, charging into places under the guise of it being trafficking, and are still continuing to do the same where people are being charged and are threatened deportation without it actually being what they've originally said it was going in. It just gave them a new thing to pretend to do.
Exactly.
And it's not to say that these things aren't going on, not by any means, but this is what frustrates me because these things are important. They are going on in Britain. They are things that need to be dealt with, but that is not where the police resources are going.
Yep.
They're even going so far as to, from what we've seen, use them as an excuse.
Yeah.
to just carry on and do the same things they've always done.
Exactly.
And the people that are actually facing these things, who are being victimised by these, like, by modern slavery and sex trafficking, are still out there.
Yep. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. So claims about trafficking are useful to police looking to justify raids, and so they continue to make them regardless of the facts. Mass raids in Soho, London in 2013 are one such example. Hundreds of officers in riot gear with dogs rampaged through the area, breaking down doors, handcuffing women on the floor, and taking at least one woman out in her underwear in front of waiting TV cameras. During the raids, Commander Alison Newcombe had the gall to comment to the Evening Standard that these raids were needed to save victims of rape and trafficking.
What, to just humiliate them in the streets?
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Arresting the victims. Good job, police.
Right?
That makes total sense.
Mm-hmm.
Brothel raids are falsely labelled as welfare visits by police, who claim that they treat sex workers as victims. Recent research from Wales shows that the safeguarding justification for raids and the rehabilitation approach is a way to embed and expand criminalisation and allow for more intervention and monitoring by the state in sex workers' lives.
Because we love that word, rehabilitation. Because
Yeah.
we really rehabilitate people in the UK.
That is a whole other thing. Examples of so-called welfare visits within the last couple of months of writing this report include a migrant woman visited 3 times in 1 month. The first time she was working with a friend. Police gave them a questionnaire to answer about whether they were trafficked, and when they said no, they came back with immigration officers and deported her friend.
Oh.
The third time, she called the ECP terrified because police had pushed their way into the premises and told her that what she was doing was illegal.
Fuck.
We told the police to go and make a complaint. We told the police to go and made a complaint, only to get a duplicitous response asking if we thought the officer had been overzealous.
Wow.
Another woman had 3 police and a council officer come to her door who refused to identify themselves and then threatened her with prison. That first example, to me, I feel, is getting to the stage where they're almost punishing people for not saying they were trafficked.
Yeah.
And, like, looking at this on a longer term basis, is it going to be safer for women to say they've been trafficked so that they receive support from the council and from other organisations?
Support? That's the problem.
Unlikely, but at least then they're not getting deported. Because if that's their other option, it's almost like shoehorning people in so that the police can continue and show these statistics in a positive light,
right,
while forcing people to lie about their circumstances in order to continue
survive.
Yeah. That's how that sounds to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Expunging cautions and convictions. A legal challenge in 2018 by the Centre of Women's Justice won a High Court ruling that women don't have to disclose their record to potential employers. In 2019, the UK Supreme Court ruled that multiple convictions for any offences being automatically declared on disclosure and barring service DBS checks was unlawful. Before the ruling, singular cautions with specific exceptions for sexual, violent, or vulnerable people offences and prison sentences were left out of these checks, but multiple cautions/offences were always included. Now, multiple or single cautions with the above exceptions issued to adults will no longer be disclosed in an enhanced criminal record check after 6 years. Multiple or single adult convictions leading to a non-prison sentence will no longer be disclosed after 11 years. As most people with convictions for soliciting/loitering almost always have multiple convictions, this benefits sex workers. This ruling is being appealed to the European Court to add additional protection that would prevent the recording and retention of loitering and soliciting records until the person is 100 years old, expunging records and decriminalize street sex work. However, the campaign which initiated these legal actions specifically states that it does not support the decriminalization of sex work. This is divisive and
Flies in the face.
Flies in the face of compelling evidence that criminalization undermines sex workers' safety.
Divisive, I think, just means like controversial.
So yeah, hopefully you have enjoyed this rather long episode, and yeah, we're back. What else? What else is there to talk about? We gotta do our endings.
Yeah.
We haven't done our endings in a while.
If you want to see us in our lovely lingerie, check out our dark fans.
So I'm just jiggling my tits.
And if you want to support us in another way, you can tip us.
Yeah.
We always like a wee coffee. So,
absolutely.
as always, if you want to use Behind the Paddle as a code at checkout at thesanctuaryofsin.com, that'll get you a wee discount.
Yeah, there is the Uncensored Market on in June.
Yeah, so the next one is going to be the 7th of June. We shall be putting out information soon about our launch party, which you guys should definitely come along to too.
Yeah, you'll be able to find Behind the Paddle and Uncensored both on Instagram. And yeah, you will be able to find our links below. And I mean, we're going to Ganaki Gathering in 2 weeks. In 2 weeks. Yeah. I will probably be on a little tour there just for that day, maybe.
Down
Who
in
knows?
Bedfordshire?
Yeah. I think that's what I'm about to say. I've got no planned tours or anything yet. I will be going to the Femdom Ball in October in London. I'm probably going to go for about 4 or 5 days. But yeah, I think that's what I'm about to say.
Yeah, thanks for listening, guys.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.